When did you realize your parents would never accept you? I noticed it the first time I came home from college for winter break. My mom hugged me at the door like she always did, but her arms stayed stiff, like she was hugging a stranger instead of her daughter. My dad stood behind her in the hallway, hands in his pockets, giving me this weird, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. That weekend felt wrong in ways I couldn't explain. They kept asking me questions about school, but not normal parent questions. Things like whether I'd been feeling okay lately, if I'd noticed anything different about myself, whether I'd been having any strange thoughts or dreams. I laughed it off and said college was just stressful, but my mom's face went pale when I said that. Then I started noticing the phone calls. My parents would be talking in the kitchen, and the second I walked in, they'd stop mid-sentence. My dad would quickly say something about work, but I'd catch my mom staring at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not quite fear, but close to it. On my third night home, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard voices downstairs. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. My dad was on the phone with someone, speaking in that hushed, urgent tone people use when they don't want to be overheard. He kept saying things like, "We need to know for sure, and what if she doesn't remember, and how do we protect ourselves?" I went back to bed but couldn't sleep. The next morning at breakfast, I asked point blank if something was wrong. My parents exchanged a look, one of those married couple telepathy moments, and my mom said everything was fine, but her hands were shaking as she poured her coffee. I decided to stay an extra day to figure out what was happening. While my parents were at work, I went through their home office. I felt guilty about it, but something was very wrong and they wouldn't tell me what. In my dad's filing cabinet, I found a folder with my name on it. Inside were documents I didn't understand at first. Medical records from when I was 7 years old, psychological evaluations, something from a police department. My hands started shaking as I read through the pages. There were incident reports, doctor's notes about concerning behavior, letters from my elementary school principal. I didn't remember any of this. According to these documents, I'd done something when I was 7, something bad enough that my parents had taken me to multiple specialists. I heard the garage door open. My parents were home early. I quickly shoved the papers back and went downstairs, my heart pounding. My mom took one look at my face and knew. She just knew that I'd found something. We sat in the living room, and my dad finally told me the truth. When I was 7, something happened at school. Something involving another student and a pair of scissors. The details were fuzzy even in the records, but the outcome wasn't. The other child had been seriously hurt, and I'd shown no remorse, no memory of doing it, no reaction at all. My parents had spent years getting me help, taking me to doctors who diagnosed me with something they never fully explained to me. They decided to never tell me, hoping I'd just grow up normal and never remember. But 6 months ago, they'd gotten a call. The other student, now grown up, had tracked down our family. They wanted to talk to me, wanted answers about what I'd done and why. My parents had been trying to decide whether to tell me, how to tell me, whether I was still dangerous without knowing it. That's when they started watching me differently, started being afraid of their own daughter. And now, sitting in that living room, I realized they'd never look at me the same way again, because they knew something about me that I didn't know about myself. And that's when everything I thought I knew about my childhood shattered. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. I can't breathe. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely zip my backpack with the folder inside. Behind me, my parents are still sitting in the living room. Their voice is a low, urgent murmur that follows me as I stumble toward the front door. "Where are you going?" My mom's voice cuts through the fog in my head. "We need to talk about this. I need air," I managed to say, not looking back. I need to think. I don't wait for their response. The door slams behind me, and I practically run to my car, fumbling with the keys. Once inside, I lock the doors and just sit there, trying to breathe through the panic. The folder is in my backpack, evidence of a life I don't remember living, evidence of something terrible I supposedly did. My phone buzzes. "Mom." I silence it and call Ethan instead. My voice cracks when he answers. "Can we meet? Right now? It's an emergency." 20 minutes later, I'm sitting across from Ethan at a 24-hour diner, the folder between us on the table. I've known him since freshman orientation, and he's seen me through finals, meltdowns, and bad breakups, but I've never seen him look this concerned. "Jesus," he whispers after I finish explaining. "And you don't remember any of this? Nothing at all?" I shake my head, staring down at my untouched coffee. It's like they're talking about someone else, some other kid who just happens to have my name. I look up at him. Is that even possible? To completely forget something that traumatic? I think so. Ethan pulls out his phone. It's called childhood amnesia or something. Let me look it up. While he searches, I flip through the folder again. Medical evaluations, therapy notes, incident reports with sections blacked out, and photographs of a little girl with bandages, her face carefully obscured. The victim. Someone I hurt badly enough that my parents spent years hiding it from me. "Here," Ethan says, sliding his phone across the table. "Dissociative amnesia. It says it can happen after trauma, especially in kids. Your brain basically blocks out memories that are too painful or disturbing. So I stabbed another child with scissors, and then my brain just deleted it?" My voice sounds hollow even to my own ears. "It's more complicated than that. Look at this part about childhood violence and psychotic episodes." He points to another article. "Sometimes kids can have violent outbursts during dissociative states. They're not even fully conscious of what they're doing." My phone buzzes again. 3 missed calls from mom, 2 from dad, and now a text. "Please come home. We need to talk about this together. It's not what you think. They want me to come back," I tell Ethan, showing him the message. "Do you want to go back?" he asks carefully. I think about the way my parents looked at me in that living room, the fear in my mother's eyes, the careful distance my father kept. 6 months of strange behavior suddenly making terrible sense. "No," I whisper. "I can't face them right now. You can crash at my place." Ethan offers immediately. "As long as you need." We gather the papers and head to his apartment across town. I keep checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see my parents' car following us. By the time we reach Ethan's place, my phone has 17 missed calls. Inside his apartment, I spread the documents across his coffee table, trying to piece together a coherent timeline. 7 years old, 2nd grade, an incident at school, psychiatric evaluations afterward, medications I don't don't remember taking? Therapy sessions I have no memory of attending. It's like reading about a stranger, I tell Ethan, who sits beside me, helping sort through the papers. How could I not know any of this happened? Your parents went to extraordinary lengths to make sure you didn't remember, he says, holding up a document about hypnotherapy sessions. Look at this. They had you hypnotized to suppress the memories. The betrayal cuts deep. My entire childhood rewritten. A sanitized version of reality constructed to protect me, or was it to protect them? It's nearly midnight when the pounding starts on Ethan's door. We freeze, looking at each other in alarm. It's your parents, isn't it? He whispers. I nod, unable to speak. The knocking grows more insistent. Honey, please, my mother's voice calls through the door. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. Ethan looks at me questioningly. I shake my head. She doesn't want to see you right now, Ethan calls back. Maybe tomorrow when everyone's calmer. You don't understand. My father's voice now, desperate in a way I've never heard before. She's contacting you tomorrow. We need to prepare her. She who? I find myself asking, moving closer to the door despite myself. There's a pause, then my father's voice again, softer now. Madeline Carter, the girl from the incident. She wants to meet with you, and we need to be ready, together. I press my forehead against the door, eyes closed. Why should I trust anything you tell me now? You've been lying to me my entire life. We were trying to protect you, my mother pleads. Please, just let us in so we can explain. I look back at the coffee table covered with evidence of my forgotten violence, at Ethan standing uncertainly in the middle of the room, and then at the door separating me from the parents I thought I knew. Tell me who Madeline Carter is, I demand through the door. Tell me exactly what I did to her. Another long pause. I can almost feel my parents exchanging looks on the other side of the door, deciding how much to reveal. You were both 7, my father finally says. There was an incident in your classroom with scissors. She was hurt badly. You had been having episodes, periods where you wouldn't seem like yourself. The doctors called them dissociative states. And now she wants to see me? After all this time? Yes, my mother answers. She reached out 6 months ago. We've been trying to figure out how to tell you, how to prepare you. We were afraid of what it might do to you, remembering. The pieces click into place their strange behavior since winter break began. The hushed phone calls, the worried glances. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid for me. I unlock the door and open it just enough to see them standing in the hallway, looking exhausted and terrified. My father's eyes are red-rimmed, my mother's mascara streaked down her cheeks. Tomorrow, I tell them quietly. I'll meet with you tomorrow and we'll talk about Madeline Carter, but tonight I'm staying here. They nod, relief visible on their faces despite my conditions. We love you, my mother whispers. We always have. Please remember that. I close the door without responding, not ready to offer forgiveness or understanding. Not yet. I turn back to Ethan, who's watching me with concern. Madeline Carter, I say, testing the name on my tongue. A name that should mean everything to me but feels like nothing at all. I guess I'm meeting her tomorrow. I spent the night on Ethan's couch, tossing and turning, my mind racing through fragments of a childhood I couldn't remember. By morning, I was exhausted, but determined to learn everything I could about Madeline Carter before meeting my parents. You look like hell, Ethan said, handing me coffee. Did you sleep at all? Maybe an hour. I opened my laptop. I need to know who she is before I talk to my parents again. The search results for Madeline Carter were frustratingly normal. LinkedIn showed a child psychologist with a PhD from Northwestern, currently working at the University Medical Center. Her professional website featured a photo of a composed woman with dark hair pulled back, smiling confidently at the camera. Publications on childhood trauma, dissociative disorders, and rehabilitation psychology. Nothing that screamed, I was stabbed by a 7-year-old. She seems normal, I said, scrolling through her Twitter feed full of psychology articles and conference announcements. What were you expecting? A revenge blog about you? Ethan peered over my shoulder. I don't know. Something. I closed my laptop with a sigh. I should call my parents. They answered on the first ring, as if they'd been sitting by the phone waiting. Mom's voice was raw from crying, and Dad immediately took over the conversation. We need to meet with Madeline together, he insisted. As a family, a united front. A united front against what? What exactly is she wanting from me? It's complicated, Mom cut in. She's researching childhood violence cases. She wants to understand what happened. I'd like to understand what happened too, I snapped, since apparently everyone knows but me. After tense negotiation, we agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown at noon. Neutral territory. I hung up and turned to Ethan, who'd been listening to every word. Want me to come with you? He offered. I considered it, but shook my head. I need to do this myself, but maybe wait for my text afterward. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. My parents were already there, sitting stiffly at a corner table, scanning the door. Mom had clearly tried to look put together, but her makeup couldn't hide her puffy eyes. Dad's leg bounced nervously under the table. Have you seen her yet? I asked, sliding into the chair across from them. Not yet. Dad checked his watch. She should be here any minute. Mom reached across the table for my hand. Honey, we need to present a unified. I saw her, Dad interrupted, his eyes fixed on the door. I turned and watched a tall woman enter, her gaze sweeping the room until it landed on our table. She moved with deliberate confidence, navigating between tables with practiced ease. As she approached, I noticed a thin, silvery scar that ran just above her right eyebrow. The Morgans, she said, her voice warm but professional. Thank you for meeting me. My parents stood awkwardly, Dad extending his hand. Dr. Carter, thank you for suggesting this arrangement. Dr. Carter, not Madeline, not the little girl I supposedly attacked, this poised professional in her tailored blazer and sensible heels. She turned to me with an assessing gaze. And you must be Allison. It's been a very long time. Apparently, I said, earning a sharp look from my mother. We ordered coffee, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the table. My parents kept exchanging glances, while Dr. Carter Madeline seemed perfectly at ease. I understand this must be disorienting for you, she finally said, addressing me directly. Your parents mentioned you don't remember the incident. They only told me about it yesterday, I replied. After hiding it my entire life, Dad cleared his throat. We were trying to protect. Let Allison speak, please, Madeline interrupted gently. I'd like to hear from her. My father's mouth snapped shut, and I felt a surge of gratitude toward this stranger. I found a folder of documents, I explained. Medical reports, therapy notes, but most of it was redacted. I don't remember anything about hurting you or why it happened. Madeline nodded thoughtfully. That's not uncommon with childhood trauma. The mind protects itself. What exactly do you want from me? I asked. After all this time, she leaned forward slightly. I'm conducting research on childhood violence and dissociative episodes. Cases like yours are extremely rare and valuable for understanding. Allison doesn't need to be part of any study, Mom interrupted. We agreed to this meeting as courtesy, but, Mom, I cut her off sharply. Let her finish. My mother's face flushed, but she fell silent. Madeline gave me a measured look before continuing. I'm not asking you to be a research subject. I'm trying to understand what happened from all perspectives. I've spent my career studying childhood trauma because of what happened between us. In a way, you shaped my entire professional life. The weight of that statement hit me hard. This woman had built a career around understanding what I couldn't even remember doing to her. What exactly did I do to you? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Allison, Dad warned, this isn't the place. She has a right to know, Madeline countered, then turned back to me. We were in second grade. You had an episode during art class and stabbed me with scissors. The scar is the only physical reminder. She touched the silver line above her eye. My stomach lurched. I'd done that. Me. I'm so sorry, I whispered, though the words felt hollow for an act I couldn't remember. You weren't yourself, she said simply. I understood that even then. My parents shifted uncomfortably as Madeline and I stared at each other across the table. There was something in her eyes, not anger or fear, but a keen interest that made me feel like she was seeing parts of me even I couldn't access. Every time I tried to ask another question, one of my parents would interject, redirecting the conversation or answering for me. After the third interruption, Madeline's professional demeanor cracked slightly, a flash of irritation crossing her features. When my mother excused herself to use the restroom and my father went to order more coffee, Madeline quickly slipped a business card across the table. Call me, she whispered. There's more to discuss that might be better without an audience. I palmed the card just as my father returned. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of careful conversation and my parents' obvious anxiety. When we finally parted ways, Madeline shook my hand firmly. I hope we'll speak again soon, she said, her eyes conveying much more than her words. Back in my car, I examined her card. On the back, she'd written a time and my office in neat handwriting. I pulled out my phone and texted Ethan, meeting over, coming back, and I think I just arranged to meet her again alone. I stare at the business card in my hand, tracing my finger over the embossed letters. Dr. Madeline Carter, child psychologist. The woman I stabbed with scissors when I was 7 years old. The woman whose face I scarred. The woman I have no memory of hurting. My phone buzzes with another text from my parents, the fifth one since I left the coffee shop. I ignore it and call Ethan instead. How'd it go? He asks immediately. Weird, I say, starting my car. She wasn't what I expected. She was professional, almost clinical about the whole thing, and my parents kept interrupting whenever we tried to talk directly to each other. So what now? I flip the card over, looking at the handwritten time. She wants to meet privately, at her university office, tomorrow at 3. Without your parents knowing? Definitely without them knowing. I pull into traffic, heading back toward Ethan's apartment. There's something they're not telling me. I could see it in the way they kept cutting her off. Are you sure meeting her alone is a good idea? No, I admit, but she's the only one being straightforward with me right now. The next day, I find myself standing outside a nondescript office door in the university's psychology building. Madeline Carter, PhD, is printed on a simple nameplate. I take a deep breath and knock. Come in, Allison. Her voice is calm, professional. Her office is exactly what you'd expect from a child psychologist. Warm lighting, comfortable chairs, and bookshelves filled with academic texts. A framed PhD diploma hangs on one wall, alongside several awards. No photos of family or friends, I notice. Just credentials. Thank you for coming, she says, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. I wasn't sure you would. I want answers, I tell her plainly. And I don't think my parents are going to give them to me. She nods, her expression thoughtful. They're trying to protect you. They always have been. By lying to me my entire life, by shielding you from trauma. She opens a drawer and pulls out a thick manila folder. Unlike the redacted version I found at home, this one appears complete. This is everything. The full record of what happened between us and what came after. Would you like to see it? My heart pounds as I reach for the folder. Yes. For the next hour, I read through detailed incident reports, medical evaluations, and psychiatric assessments. The clinical language doesn't soften the horror of what happened. 7-year-old me, in the middle of art class, suddenly standing up and walking to Madeline's desk. No warning, no provocation. I picked up the scissors and stabbed her just above the eye. When the teacher pulled me away, I was completely blank-faced. No emotion, no recognition of what I'd done. Jesus, I whisper, looking up at Madeline. I could have blinded you, but you didn't, she says simply. The blade missed my eye by less than an inch. I flip through more pages, finding prescriptions for medications I never knew I took, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, drugs you don't give to children unless something is seriously wrong. They medicated me? For how long? Almost 2 years? Madeline confirms. You were having dissociative episodes, periods where you'd essentially check out. Your body would still function, but you weren't really there. I find reports from a Dr. Simmons, a hypnotherapist who worked with me weekly for over a year. The goal, stated explicitly in his notes, complete memory suppression of the incident and associated trauma. They literally erased my memory, I say, my voice hollow. They paid someone to make me forget. They thought it was the kindest option, Madeline says. You were suffering. The guilt was destroying you, even though you weren't in control when it happened. And you're okay with that? With what they did? She leans forward slightly. What I think doesn't matter. But professionally speaking, I believe you were experiencing severe childhood trauma. The dissociative episodes, the violence, these were symptoms, not the cause. Symptoms of what? Madeline's eyes meet mine steadily. That's what I've been trying to understand. Children don't just have psychotic breaks for no reason. Something was happening to you, Allison. Something your parents have never fully explained. My phone buzzes in my pocket, another text from my parents, no doubt wondering where I am. I ignore it and close the folder. Thank you for showing me this, I say, for not hiding the truth from me. I've built my career around understanding childhood trauma, she replies, partly because of what happened between us. I need to know the whole story, not just the parts your parents are willing to share. I nod, gathering my things. I'll talk to them tonight. Be gentle with them, Madeline says unexpectedly. They made choices they thought would protect you. Right or wrong, they were acting out of love. I'm not feeling particularly gentle when I burst through my parents' front door 3 hours later, the complete folder from Madeline clutched in my hand. Allison, Mom jumps up from the couch. Where have you been? We've been texting you all day. I was with Madeline, I say, watching their faces fall. Dr. Carter, she showed me everything, the complete file. Dad takes a step toward me. Honey, you need to understand. You had me hypnotized, I shout, my voice cracking. You drugged me for 2 years and then paid someone to erase my memories. How could you do that? We were trying to help you, Mom pleads, tears filling her eyes. You were so young and you were suffering so much. You didn't help me, you erased me. You decided parts of my life weren't convenient, so you just deleted them. Dad sinks into a chair, his face ashen. It wasn't like that. You weren't sleeping. You were having nightmares, panic attacks. The doctor said the trauma was too much for your developing brain to process. What trauma? I demand. What was happening to me that was so terrible you had to medicate me into oblivion? My parents exchange a look I can't interpret. A silent communication developed over decades of marriage and, apparently, shared secrets. Tell me, I insist. Madeline thinks something else was going on, something that caused the dissociative episodes. Dad covers his face with his hands, and when he looks up, there are tears in his eyes. I've seen my father cry exactly twice in my life at his mother's funeral, and when I graduated high school. This is different. This is raw, unfiltered pain. There was something before the incident with Madeline, he finally says, his voice barely audible. Something worse. Mom makes a small wounded sound. Richard, don't. She deserves to know, Ellen. We should have told her years ago. I stand frozen between them, suddenly afraid of what's coming. Told me what? Dad takes a deep, shuddering breath. You had a brother, Allison. His name was James. He died when you were 6 years old. A year before the incident with Madeline. The world tilts sideways. A brother? A dead brother I don't remember? That's not possible, I whisper. I would remember having a brother. No, Mom says softly. You wouldn't, because you found his body, and the trauma was so severe that your mind blocked it completely, even before the hypnotherapy. You found him in the bathtub, Dad continues, tears now streaming down his face. You were the one who came running to tell us something was wrong with Jamie. By the time we got to him, it was too late. I sink to my knees on the living room floor, trying to process what they're telling me. A brother, James, Jamie, a bathtub. My mind grasps for any fragment, any whisper of memory, but there's nothing, just a vast, empty space where a brother should be. After that, Dad says, you started having the episodes, periods where you just go blank. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia triggered by trauma. We were trying to help you through it when the incident with Madeline happened. Why didn't you tell me? I ask, my voice small. All these years, why didn't you tell me I had a brother? Because you were finally happy again, Mom says through her tears. After everything, the medications, the therapy, the hypnosis, you were finally a normal, happy child. We couldn't bear to risk that. I look up at them, these strangers who raised me, who shaped my reality by deciding which parts of it I was allowed to know. I need to see him, I say. I need proof he existed. Dad nods slowly, then stands and walks to the bookshelf. He reaches behind a row of books and pulls out a small key. Without a word, he walks to the hall closet and unlocks a metal box on the top shelf that I've never noticed before. From it, he removes a photograph in a simple silver frame and hands it to me with trembling hands. And there he is, a boy with my same dark hair and my father's eyes, maybe 8 years old, his arm around a smaller version of me. We're both grinning at the camera, our faces pressed together. James, my brother, the brother I found dead and then forgot completely. His name, I whisper, was James. I sit in Dr. Levinson's office, staring at the framed diplomas on her wall while she waits patiently for me to speak. It's been 3 days since I learned about James, my brother, and I still can't form a coherent thought about him without feeling like I'm talking about a stranger from someone else's life. It's okay to take your time, Dr. Levinson says gently. She's a trauma specialist, Madeline recommended, someone who specializes in recovered memories. This is an extraordinary situation. I keep trying to remember him, I finally say. I look at that photo my dad gave me, and I stare at his face, and I feel nothing. No recognition, no grief, just this weird emptiness where something important should be. The mind protects itself in remarkable ways, she explains, especially children's minds. What you experienced was so traumatic that your brain essentially walled it off completely. But how do you forget an entire person? Someone you lived with, grew up with? Dr. Levinson leans forward slightly. Your parents mentioned you've been having dreams? I nod, wrapping my arms around myself. Not about James exactly, just water, lots of water, and sometimes scissors. I wake up feeling panicked, but I can never remember the details. Those fragments might be your brain trying to process the memories. Let's try something. She guides me through a visualization exercise, asking me to close my eyes and imagine walking through my childhood home, not looking for anything specific, just observing details. I describe the living room with its blue couch, the kitchen with the island where I did homework, the stairs with the creaky third step. Is there a bathroom upstairs? She asks casually. My body tenses instantly. Yes. Can you describe it? White tiles, blue shower curtain with fish on it. My breathing quickens. There was a yellow duck, a rubber duck on the edge of the tub. Something flickers in my mind, a flash of yellow against white porcelain, small hands pushing it through water. Good, Dr. Levinson says softly. Stay with that image if you can. Another flash, a boy's laugh, water splashing. I see small hands that must be mine, pushing the duck toward larger hands, a boy's hands. James, I whisper, and suddenly I'm crying, not for a memory, but for the absence of one. Why can't I remember his face? After the session, I call my parents and ask them to bring more photos. They arrive at Ethan's apartment an hour later with a shoebox full of them. Dad Dad's hands shake as he places it on the coffee table. We kept these hidden, Mom explains, her voice small. We were afraid seeing them might trigger something. I lift the lid and there he is. James in 100 moments I don't remember living. James and me building a snowman. James blowing out birthday candles. James holding my hand as we stand in front of a Christmas tree. He was 2 years older than you, Dad says as I flip through the photos. He loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. He protected you, Mom adds, wiping tears. If other kids were mean at the playground, he'd stand up for you. You followed him everywhere. I find a photo of us in a bathtub together, both covered in bubbles, grinning at the camera. My stomach clenches. What happened to him? I ask, though I already know part of the answer. How did he die? My parents exchange that look again, the silent communication that now seems less like secrecy and more like shared pain. He had epilepsy, Dad explains. We'd been managing it with medication since he was 4, but sometimes he'd still have seizures. That day, Mom continues, her voice breaking. I was doing laundry. You two had been playing, and I heard you run a bath. I thought you were just playing with your toys in the water like you always did. Dad takes her hand. James had a seizure while in the tub. You came running downstairs saying something was wrong with Jamie, that he wouldn't wake up. By the time we got upstairs, he can't finish the sentence. The scissors. I need to know about the scissors that were in my fragmented memories. Was there? Did I have scissors that day? Mom nods slowly. You'd been cutting paper for an art project before you went upstairs. You were still holding them when you came to get us. The police asked about them during the investigation, but it was clear what happened. It was a tragic accident. But I blamed myself, I say, the realization dawning. I thought I should have saved him. You were 6 years old, Dad says firmly. There was nothing you could have done. But yes, afterward you became different. You stopped talking for weeks. Then you started having episodes where you'd just zone out completely. And then I hurt Madeline, I whisper. The doctors said it was a post-traumatic response. Mom explains. Your mind couldn't process what happened to James, so it created these dissociative states. During one of them, the incident with Madeline happened. I look down at a photo of James with his arm around me, both of us laughing at something off camera. A brother I loved and lost and then erased completely. I need to see where it happened, I say suddenly. I need to go to the bathroom where he died. My parents are reluctant, but understand it's part of my healing process. The next day, they take me to my childhood home. The family who bought it 5 years ago is surprisingly understanding when my parents explain the situation, agreeing to let us visit briefly. Standing in that bathroom is surreal. It's been remodeled, different tiles, different fixtures, but the layout is the same. I stand in the doorway, feeling my heart race as fragments of memory start to surface. Water overflowing, James's face underwater, my small hands trying to pull him up, the scissors I'd been carrying, dropped on the floor, running for help, too late. I sink to my knees. Overwhelmed by grief for a brother I'm only now beginning to remember. Over the next few weeks, Madeline becomes an unexpected source of support. She shares research about childhood trauma and memory, helps me understand the psychological mechanisms that protected me all these years. Your brain did what it needed to survive, she explains during one of our meetings. The violence toward me wasn't about me at all. You were expressing trauma in the only way your 6-year-old mind could process. I still feel terrible about hurting you, I tell her. I know, she says with a small smile. That's why I became a child psychologist. I wanted to understand why a seemingly normal child would suddenly do something so out of character. You were my first case study, in a way. With her guidance and Dr. Levinson's therapy, I begin piecing together my fractured past. The memories don't return in full. They probably never will. But I start to feel the emotional connection to James that was missing before. I grieve for him, finally. 20 years too late. My relationship with my parents transforms too. The anger I felt about their deception gradually gives way to understanding. They made mistakes, but they were drowning in their own grief while trying to protect their remaining child. We should have told you when you were older, Dad admits during a family therapy session. We just never found the right moment, and the longer we waited, the harder it became. I finish for him. I understand. As winter break ends and my final semester of college begins, I return to campus with a new sense of purpose. Ethan helps me move back into my dorm, handling me with a gentleness that makes me both grateful and slightly annoyed. I'm not gonna break, you know, I tell him as he insists on carrying my heaviest box. I know, he says, but you've been through a lot. It's okay to let people help sometimes. My parents visit campus a few weeks later, the first time they've come without tension or secrets between us. We have lunch at my favorite cafe, and for the first time in months, the conversation flows naturally. Dad tells a story about James that makes us all laugh, a small miracle of healing. Later that week, I sit in Madeline's university office, discussing my decision to change my major. Psychology? She raises an eyebrow. Are you sure? You were set on business administration. I want to understand how the mind works, I explain. How trauma shapes us, how memory protects us, maybe even help others like me someday. She smiles, a genuine expression that crinkles the scar above her eye. The scar I gave her all those years ago. You'd make an excellent psychologist, she says, though I should warn you, it's not an easy path. Nothing worth doing ever is, I reply, thinking of the journey I've been on these past months. Besides, I have a good mentor to guide me. As I leave her office, I feel the weight of my recovered past settling into place alongside my present. James will always be the brother I lost twice, once to death and once to forgetting. But now, at least, he's also the brother I found again, a missing piece of myself finally reclaimed.